Assemble, Marvel fan. Let's talk Captain America. With the new Captain America movie just around the corner in 2025, now is the perfect time to revisit the trilogy that started it all, and remind you why Captain America's story has become one of MCU's best. Now, here's the deal. This isn't just another superhero series. It's the foundation of Steve Rogers' journey. And let me tell you, whether you're a die-hard Marvel fan or just someone who loves seeing the shield throwing action, this review got you covered. Easter eggs, epic battles, and a character arc that's actually satisfying?
I can do this all day.
All right, let's talk about the movie that introduced us to the Star-Spangled Man with a plan, the First Avenger. This one takes us back to World War II, where Steve Rogers starts out as the underdog of underdogs, a scrawny kid with a heart of gold. He wants to fight but keeps getting rejected because, well, he's tiny. With the Dr. Erskine and his super soldier program, he receives serum injection. Steve transforms into the ripped, shield-wielding hero we all know and love. The story then takes us through Steve's evolution from a propaganda tool. Yes, there's a whole montage of him singing and dancing as the Star-Spangled Man, to a full-blown hero leading the charge against Hydra. Hydra, by the way, is a Nazi science division led by Red Skull, a dude who took the same serum but ended up with a very unfortunate face. The action is solid, with standout scenes like the rescue mission and, of course, the Red Skull showdown. Steve's relationship with Peggy Carter is genuinely sweet. They have this connection that makes the ending, where Steve sacrifices himself and misses their date. An emotional gut punch. And let's not forget the Tesseract, which starts as Hydra's ultimate weapon but becomes a major player in the MCU. The movie is a great introduction to one of Marvel's best characters. It's not the most action-packed movie in the MCU, but it's got heart, it's got charm, and it sets the stage for some epic stories down the line. Next, The Winter Soldier. This movie is a total shift in tone, taking our boy Steve Rogers from the patriotic World War II vibes of the First Avenger into a modern-day spy thriller. It's not just a superhero flick, it's a paranoid political thriller with a side of epic action. It turns out that after Steve crashing Red Skull's plane into the Arctic, he survived due to the super soldier serum in his body and was frozen in the ice. He's later discovered and revived in the modern day. The story picks up with Steve trying to find his place in the 21st century. He's working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but let's be honest, he's not a fan of the whole spying on everyone thing. S.H.I.E.L.D. under Nick Fury, with some serious shady business, has been infiltrated by Hydra. Yet the guys Steve thought he defeated in World War II are back and worse than ever. But the real gut punch? Turns out it's Bucky Barnes, Steve's best friend from the 1940s, who somehow survived his fall and has been brainwashed into an unstoppable assassin. That emotional weight hits hard. Steve doesn't want to fight Bucky, but he has to. It's one of those conflicts that's just dripping with drama and stakes. The action in this movie? Straight fire. The elevator fight scene? Absolute perfection. The highway battle where Steve goes toe-to-toe with the Winter Soldier? Chef's kiss. And the hand-to-hand combat is brutal. It's not just flashy, it feels real. Black Widow gets a lot of screen time, and her dynamic with Steve is awesome. She's the cynical spy, he's the moral compass, and together they're peeling back layers of conspiracy. Plus, we're introduced to Sam Wilson, aka Falcon. His wingsuit adds a whole new dimension to the action scenes, and his bromance with Steve is a highlight. The Winter Soldier wraps up with Steve and Sam taking down Hydra's Project Insight in a helicarrier smashing finale. Bucky saves Steve in the end and vanishes, leaving Steve and Sam to team up for the next mission, finding Bucky and helping him figure out who he really is. Natasha, meanwhile, drops a truth bomb by exposing Hydra's infiltration, taking S.H.I.E.L.D. down with it, setting up a ripple effect across the MCU. This movie doesn't just advance Steve's story, it flips the MCU on its head. The fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. has repercussions that ripple through every Marvel movie after this. And that mid-credit scene? Yeah, we meet Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, teasing Avengers: Age of Ultron. The emotional weight, the incredible action, the smart storytelling. This is how you do a sequel. Now, Civil War. This is not just a Captain America movie, it's practically Avengers 2.5. You've got Captain, Iron Man, and just about every other hero duking it out over ideology, betrayal, and of course, some kick-ass action. The story kicks off with the Sokovia Accords, a government treaty meant to regulate superheroes after the destruction we've seen in previous movies. Tony Stark's all for it because, let's face it, he's got guilt stacked higher than his bank account. But Steve, he's not having it. He believes heroes need the freedom to act when needed, not be puppets of the government. And bam, The Avengers are split right down the middle. And then there's Bucky, aka the Winter Soldier. Steve's trying to protect his best friend who's been framed for a bombing, while Tony sees him as a dangerous liability. This leads to one of the most emotional conflicts in the MCU because it's not just about politics, it's personal. This movie marks the breaking point of relationship between Steve and Iron Man, which did not fully reconcile until Avenger Endgame in 2019. The action in this movie? Absolutely insane. That airport battle is one of the most fun, jaw-dropping sequences in superhero cinema. You've got Spider-Man geeking out while fighting, Ant-Man going giant, and Black Panther making one hell of an entrance. Speaking of which, T'Challa is a standout in this movie. He's regal, badass, and his story arc, seeking vengeance for his father's death, adds a layer of depth to the plot. But the real MVP of this movie? The ending. Forget the big team battles. The emotional core is in that final fight between Cap, Iron Man, and Bucky. When Tony realizes Bucky killed his parents and Steve kept it from him, that's gut-wrenching. It's not just a fight, it's a breakup. And when Steve drops the shield, that's not just symbolic, it's a mic drop moment for their friendship. Zemo might not be your typical villain, but he's incredibly effective. His plan isn't about world domination, it's about tearing the Avengers apart from the inside. And guess what? It works. So here's how Civil War leaves us. Cap disables Tony's suit and walks away, leaving the shield behind because, ouch, emotions. The Avengers are shattered, with Cap breaking his team out of prison and going rogue, while Tony's left to pick up the pieces of the mess. It's less happily ever after and more, see you next time, if we're still friends. This movie has everything: action, heart, and emotional stakes. It's about loyalty, trust, and the cost of standing by your beliefs. Steve Rogers proves once again why he's not just a great superhero, but a great character. So, we've covered all three main Captain American movies. Now let's talk about the other Marvel movies where Captain America isn't the main guy, but he still shows up and makes an impact. After Civil War, the Avengers are scattered like a bad breakup where no one gets the house. Steve and his crew go underground, running covert missions while the world wonders where its heroes went. Fast forward to Infinity War, and things get intense. Steve, rocking the rugged nomad look, shows up when the Avengers need him most. But even then, they can't stop Thanos from snapping half the universe into dust. Then comes the Endgame, where Steve helps pull off the time heist of the century, bringing everyone back. In the final battle, Tony Stark uses the Infinity Stones to snap Thanos and his army out of existence. But the power is too much, and it kills him. It's emotional and epic, and it's the perfect send-off for the character. After the war, Steve decides it's time to hang up the shield. He takes a trip back to the past, finally living the life he always wanted with Peggy Carter. Old man Steve pops up at the end, looking like he's aged better than your favorite bourbon, and passes the shield and the legacy to Sam Wilson. A bittersweet moment that's equal parts emotional and satisfying. Finally, let's talk about the Easter eggs. When Steve is catching up on modern culture in The Winter Soldier, he keeps a notebook of things to research. Here's the fun part. The list changes depending on the country where the movie was released. For example, in the US, the list includes Star Wars, Nirvana, and Steve Jobs. In France, it mentions France '98 World Cup and the 1993 band Daft Punk. In the UK, it mentions the Beatles and the 1966 World Cup. It's a subtle but clever nod to global audiences, and it adds a fun layer to Steve's adjustment to the modern world. Next, in the first Avenger, before Steve becomes the iconic Captain America, he performs in a War Bonds tour, dressed in his first costume. While the scene is humorous, there's an Easter egg in the background. The poster advertising the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan features a song that later plays as a major theme in Captain America's story. The theme is The Star-Spangled Man, a fun, 1940s-style catchy tune, but it's also a clever callback to Steve's roots, reminding us that he's not just a super soldier, but a symbol of patriotism and hope. And in Endgame, there's a brief but clever callback to Iron Man 2. When Tony Stark is tinkering with his father's old technology and working on the plans for the new element, there's a brief moment where we see Howard Stark's blueprint of a shield design that looks very similar to Captain America's. This design foreshadows the future connection between Tony and Steve. It's a neat tie between their shared history and the personal connection that plays out through the MCU. If you like this video, please help to click like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to my channel. Thank you.